Hello and welcome to episode number 22 of the Just Flying series. So let's go for a flight. This is the evening of the 6th of July for me, and I'm also keeping half an eye on the news on a separate screen at a shambles of a British government which is slowly imploding, which is all rather fun. The sooner we get rid of that twat Boris Johnson, the better we'll be, and it looks like it might actually be happening finally. The number one twat in politics award does still go to Donald Trump, but Boris Johnson over here in the UK, he does run him a very close second. And most of his ministers seem to be resigning and jumping ship, so yeah, that's all a good thing. Anyway, trying to remember where a centre line is on a runway, and let's go for it. Today's plan, that's Nelson where we're leaving, and we're going to XNZHV Havelock. During my second trip over to NZ, I did actually stop here at Nelson, although I can't remember exactly where the hotel was. I was on the coach trip at the time, and we got here late, left early, so I didn't really venture far to work out where the hotel was in relation to the city. Really not sure on this one. I can remember most places I stayed, and in fact yesterday I had a flight for the fun of it and actually took a little detour past the Otrahonga Kiwi Holiday Park, which is a plot of land with lots of little individual chalet type buildings, and it was very nice there. Yes, I also remember taking a walk into the town in the evening and finding a lovely little pub which did some food, and they served me my dinner, and I was starting to feel a bit more like myself again. Actually, to explain that statement, there is a little story behind it. Now, I'm a big fan of a lot of different sports, and one of my favourites is rugby league. We have the Super League over here in the UK, which is great, but the NRL competition in the Southern Hemisphere, that's the best in the world. They have a team in New Zealand, lots of Australian ones, some of the best players in the world, and I really enjoy it. Now, it's a long story of how I came to this, but picking a team to follow, this was long before X-Plane and my involvement or connections to New Zealand, so I didn't really have a connection to anywhere, and I ended up with the North Queensland Cowboys. They're based in a place called Townsville in Australia. With my second trip away, it was just before the season started, but teams were playing some pre-season friendlies, so I based the timing of everything to be in Townsville on a day that the Cowboys were playing. I left the UK, had a nice couple of weeks in Australia at a few different places, then got to Townsville the day before the game. And on the afternoon I did go to the stadium to buy a ticket, which wasn't actually necessary, as I'm sure you could pay cash at the gate, but I wanted one as a souvenir. Plus it was an excuse to take a picture of the stadium too, because the game wasn't actually going to be played there. It was quite a nice thing, really, where the Cowboys were going to play all of their pre-season games at the grounds of some of the local amateur clubs in the area, which would help them out as those clubs got a nice bit of extra cash from gate receipts. So I've done all that, had a wander around, pleasant enough evening in Townsville. The next morning was lovely sunny day. I didn't bother with any breakfast. Sometimes I'll have a huge plate full of something in the morning. Sometimes my evening meal is the first thing I eat all day. Just depends how I feel, really. That day I just wasn't very hungry. So I think the game kicked off at about 5 o'clock or something like that. So this would be maybe about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was thinking for food that I'd be happy enough to eat something at the ground, burgers, chips, hot dogs, whatever they've got. That would be fine. And I was thinking that I'm sure there will be at least one mobile burger caravan or something like that there. But as it's just an amateur ground, I can't be certain of it. So fairly close to the hotel was a Subway shop. And I thought, if I get a sandwich from there now, if by chance there is no catering at the game, then yes, I'm still going to be hungry, but at least I'll have had something. So bear in mind, this is the only thing I've eaten. And about an hour after eating this Subway sandwich, my stomach started to feel a little bit weird. A bit later, I then realised I needed to head back to the hotel room quickly. And within a few minutes of walking through the door, let's just say things were explosively exiting my body from both ends at the same time. It was not pretty. So after travelling to the other side of the entire planet to see the Cowboys play, when the match kicked off, I was in my hotel room violently shitting myself. Thanks a fucking lot, Subway. Now, if you've ever been through anything like that, you'll know it just kills all of your energy, your body aches, and all I remember is being collapsed on the bed, wondering if I could just get a flight from Townsville and go home. But once I had got to the point where there's nothing left to come out, I realised, okay, I've got flights booked and hotels, it would be a pain to try and change anything, not to mention the cost. And the next morning I was due to fly to Sydney, change planes, then fly to Auckland. And I thought, okay, there's nothing left inside to come out, so I've stopped being ill. It was just feeling really weak at that point, so I just needed to struggle through that journey and I could collapse again at the other end. So in the morning, got my backpack, which now feels 10 times heavier. Slept through most of the two plane journeys, eventually got to Auckland, put the do not disturb sign on the hotel room door, and didn't come out again for 24 hours. I did have it was 3 more nights in Auckland, because that hotel was the only thing I'd booked in New Zealand. With having been there before, I knew about things called eyesights, which are brilliant for tourists, because they'll sort out all your travel accommodation. So I thought, I just need a hotel in Auckland for when I get there, and then I can use the eyesights to just make everything else up as I go along. So yeah, I had those 3 more nights in Auckland, still not feeling particularly brilliant. Then got a bus down to Otahonga, where I mentioned the chalets earlier, and that was where I finally started to feel a bit more alive once again and started to have a proper holiday once more. Although it was a few more days until I felt totally better again, and in the 11 years since that point I still haven't set foot in a fucking Subway shop, and I'm sure I never will either. Right then, so we've arrived. That's it over there. Little town of Havelock, which actually doesn't have an airport. It's purely a fantasy one, which I flew past and thought, okay, that harbour looks nice, there's enough room for a runway in there. I bet I could make something that looks nice, would be quite, let's not stall the plane. Yeah, I bet I could make something that looks nice, be interesting to land there. Unfortunately, being me, if I see somewhere and think, I bet that would be good with an airport, I can make one. That's what we've got. Yeah, I was. Actually, as we were flying down the valley, I was kind of keeping a little bit of a lookout just to see if there was anything that looked like runways down there. I'm not really paying attention to how close we were getting to this place, which is why I've arrived with way too much altitude and did need a little orbit before we can come in and land. Much better now, although still that's way too much airspeed. Slow down a bit. Don't need all the runway, but don't want to land too long. We're down. Yeah, probably a good thing that we've got reversers on this. Yeah, landing at that speed, that far down the runway, might not have stopped every aeroplane before we run through the fence and the hedge and everything at the end. Let's just see what happened. Oh, no, back a bit further. Yeah, if I'd got the speed under control, it would have been a nice touchdown right at the very threshold, wouldn't it? Well, we survived. We're down. Any landing that you can walk away from and all that. So, welcome to XNZHV, I think, Havelock. Which would probably be an interesting place to go to if ever made it back to New Zealand for a third time. Just to see what it really looks like, as opposed to what I've turned it into. Well, in Explain, it's still quite a fun place to land occasionally. I like it anyway. So that was episode number 22 of the Just Flying series. And what will probably be the final stop in South Island. And might take the trip over onto North Island for the next one, we'll see. But we'll work that out next time. So, until then, take care, stay out of Subway sandwich shops, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!